Boys and girls of every age, wouldn't you like to see something strange? Come with us and you will see this, our episode about the director behind not one but 3 amazingly creepy stop-motion films. But whose mind could bring vision to such chilling films? Let's find out. Before we start, don't forget to check out our Patreon, our Discord, and of course, like and subscribe. Henry Selick was born in Glen Ridge, New Jersey, and raised in Rumson, which backwards is red rum, which backwards again is murder, which is what it's like to live in New Jersey. Henry's fascination with animation came at a young age, when he saw Lot Reiniger's stop-motion film, The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, and the animated creatures of The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad by Ray Harryhausen. Even though he was fascinated with animation, he didn't consider it a career until much later. Instead, after graduating from Rumson Fair Haven High School in 1970, he studied science at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, and art at Syracuse University and Central St. Martin's College of Art and Design in London.
I didn't get into animation until I was already taking college classes. I was doing sculpture, photography, a lot of painting and drawing. And I found that I was starting to do things in series, like one photograph wouldn't make me happy. I would tell a little story with a series of photographs, and then I once made this sculpture, and I didn't like the pose, so I put joints. It was a full-size human. I put joints in its arms and legs so I could change the pose when I felt like it. Finally, I saw some actually experimental animation, and I realized everything I love. I was also a musician, and that was sort of my second choice. Everything I love comes together in animation. So that's what, all my hobbies came together. It took a long time to get used to how slow it is to make an animated film, but I got used to it.
Selick eventually enrolled at Cal Arts to study animation, where his 2 student films, Phases and Tube Tales, were nominated for Student Academy Awards, beating my original work, Just a Lump of Clay. In the 1970s, after completing his college studies, Selick was hired by Walt Disney Productions as an in-betweener and trained under Eric Larson. Eric Larson, remember him? No? Well, just check out his video right here.
When I joined Disney, the good thing was it was still like a school where many of the old masters were still there. Eric Larson, Frank and Ollie. There were night courses. There were people that were trying to train a new generation to carry on. It's where I also met many of my comrades. And so the teaching and the what was being passed on was magnificent, but they were struggling a little bit as far as what is our future. It didn't include, people like me, and certainly didn't include people like Tim Burton yet. It would take a while before that time, but it was where great bonds were made and beginnings began.
His first projects as an in-betweener were for Pete's Dragon and the featurette The Small One.
Small one, small one. Small one for sale, 1 piece of silver, small one for sale.
For the 1981 film Fox and the Hound, Henry became a full-fledged animator under Glen Keane. Glen Keane. Remember him? No? Well, check out his video right here. After production, many animators left the studio to pursue careers elsewhere, including Selick. Henry spent most of his time as a freelancer directing animation for television commercials and for products such as Pillsbury Doughboy and Ritz Crackers. He also worked as a sequence director or storyboard artist for a number of films, such as Twice Upon a Time, Return to Oz, and Nutcracker the Motion Picture. His television work also included some animation work for... This relationship with MTV led to a potential series called Slow Bob in the Lower Dimensions.
I proposed a series of short films that would all sort of fit together like a jigsaw puzzle into one half-hour show called Slow Bob in the Lower Dimensions.
for MTV. I did get to produce this first installment, the pilot episode, which used live action, stop motion, and cutout animation. The other episodes of Slow Bob, which were scripted, never went into production because upon completion of this first installment, The Nightmare Before Christmas was brought back to life. I was offered the job of directing, and that's what I did.
You see, Nightmare Before Christmas had been an idea well before all of this.
Nightmare Before Christmas was similar in that I'd known Tim at Disney. He'd come up with this brilliant idea of a collision of holidays. He'd come up with Jack Skellington, Sandy Claus, and the dog Zero, and it was going to be a half-hour TV special. Well, it was too weird for Disney at that time, and we went our separate ways. When Tim came back to me, he'd already had huge success in live action, and I'd been doing stop motion for years. And it was one of those, okay, I'm handing you this little baby, and I want you to grow it into a film with Danny Elfman's songs and Caroline Thompson writing a screenplay to weave it together. There was a rudimentary script. This guy, Michael McDowell, who had written Beetlejuice, based on Tim's original story, but Michael was ill and he eventually died. He wasn't in top form. And so it was basically, I knew Tim, I knew his original idea. It was jettisoned. We had 2 songs from Danny Elfman, and we went into production without a script, which is insane. But we had this deadline. I mean, we'd given ourselves, enough time to do what we needed to do. And we basically found the story while, with these couple of songs, others coming, we started creating the link in our story department. Because in animation, your story department they're writers who draw. They turn it into visuals. So we started working out the script, building around the songs. And then after I think there were 4 or 5 songs and we'd kind of flushed that out, Caroline Thompson, who's a very gifted screenwriter, and at the time was Danny Elfman's girlfriend, he said, well, we should bring in my girlfriend. She's pretty good. And what has she done? Well, she'd worked with Tim before and done amazing things. Then she came in to take it to that next step. But the screenplay was written when we'd already gotten almost halfway through figuring out the movie. And she added a lot. And there was a couple of ideas from Michael McDowell's original script we kept, like Sally jumping out a window and breaking to pieces and, oh my God, but then sewing herself back together. For my part, it was figure out a way, how are we going to do this, where are we going to do this, do a test of Jack. I storyboarded some really simple early thing. We built fundamental designs. Early on, there's often a proof of concept, and you're working with no crew. I'd done an independent project, an MTV funded, but also very independent project called Slow Bob in the lower dimensions, and I'd done it at Phil Tippett's studio. Phil Tippett's one of the most famous stop motion and effects guys, goes all the way back to the first Star Wars. And there was a, pick a scene, even though there was no script, but there was an idea for Jack being shot out of the sky. And I storyboarded it, and Cameron Noble built a set, and we had an ultra small group of people, and we built a Jack, but he wasn't a great Jack because we couldn't build a beautiful armatured puppet. We had to use wire, and we shot some of this. We didn't shoot the entire test, but it was just, okay, what would it feel like? And what would it move like? And ultimately, the Jack in that it wasn't magnificent, but it was a proof of concept that Tim liked and Disney was good with, and it allowed us to, move on to actually making the film.
Tim Burton and director Henry Selick assembled 13 of the most brilliant animators, along with over 100 specially trained camera operators, puppet makers, set builders, and prop makers. Over a 3-year period, they filled 19 sound stages with Nightmare's 230 sets and hundreds of individual puppet characters.
Nightmare wasn't a huge success when it initially came out. It earned about $50 million in the US and was generally regarded as a moderate hit. But boy, we were about to show them. Throughout the years, the film began to gather a cult following with the help of multiple viewings, as well as the VHS release, and eventually became a phenomenon.
It was one of those things where I loved it, I had the exact same feelings, but I also felt, I could feel it, this is something different, and not everyone who's come loves it right away. And so there was a joy, but there's also a sadness like, well, we made it for this much, it made twice that, and we had our time, and it will drift away and be gone. I had no idea that this other thing would happen. You know, beginning with Tim, and very much with Rick Heinrichs and his ability to bring things into the third dimension from Tim's beautiful ideas and sketches, and Danny's songs. The situation of making this film gave an opportunity to virtually everyone was able to flower. I've never been on a film, I've had to be a maniac control freak on other films. You know, half the people know the film we're making, the other half they're not sure, and you have to push them harder. It wasn't like that in this film. People got in tune so easily and quick, except for Kelly, but no, he was great from the beginning, and he and Kendall did.
Toward the end, I finally got it. It was good.
From there, the team moved straight into production on James and the Giant Peach, which Joe Ranft tried to convince the staff to produce since the early 1980s. The book enamored him with its liberating material ever since he first read it in 3rd grade. However, Disney refused because of a potentially expensive and difficult animation process and the source material's weird subject matter. I mean, come on, it's not that weird.
Crocodile tongues.
Tongues?
1,000 long, slimy crocodile tongues, boiled in the skull of a dead witch for 20 days and 20 nights. Add the fingers of a young monkey, the gizzard of a pig, the beak of a parrot, and 3 spoonfuls of sugar. Stew for a week, and then let the moon do the rest.
Okay, it's weird, but come on. Selick also enjoyed the book and thought about adapting it to the screen for several years. However, he understood the obstacles in doing so, such as the source material's dreamy nature, episodic structure, and the reputation of other doll books for being so agitational, some parts of the world banned them. When the author's widow and executor of his estate began offering film rights to the book in 1992, Disney bought them, and eventually Henry was put on the project.
For me, seeing what you perceive as real objects coming to life is still really impressive.
B-Mark.
For James and the Giant Peach, director Selick guided an award-winning team of animators, illustrators, set designers, and camera operators on 22 sound stages over a 3-year production schedule, all working to push the artistic limits of stop-motion animation.
The music for the film, by Randy Newman, was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Music. It also won Best Animated Feature Film at the Annecy International Animated Film Festival. Overall, the film was just as well received as Nightmare, but failed to gather as much of a fan following. Even though I really like James and the Giant Peach. Unfortunately, Henry's next project, Monkeybone, was about to go sour. The original idea came from the comic book Dark Town, written by Kaja Blackley. A fan of the comic and member of the San Francisco animation community passed a copy of Dark Town to one of Selick's producers. Selick fell in love with the book and vigorously pursued the rights. In a letter to Kaja, he wrote, "I've never felt any project was closer to my sensibilities than this one." The initial intention was to stay true to the source material, which can be seen in early designs from Selick's company, Twitching Image. However, as the project developed, it eventually evolved into more of a dark comedy. Monkeybone is full of what Henry Selick does best, amazing and creepy practical effects. Unfortunately, it almost goes too far, and the plot doesn't help much. Monkeybone ended up as a failure, both at the box office, grossing only under $6 million out of a $75 million budget, and critically. Henry argues that the movie's distributor, 20th Century Fox, gave up on the project after the June departure of chairman Bill Mechanic, who greenlit the film. According to production sources, Fox took Monkeybone from Selick and recut it after a disastrous screening at which the sound system failed. Executive producer Chris Columbus also did an edit in an attempt to make the movie more mainstream before giving it back to Selick. Basically, what I'm saying here, folks, go rent Monkeybone from your nearest Blockbuster today. Although it was a bad experience, Henry learned a lot about how he works with others. In 2005, he teamed up with Leica to make the short Moongirl.
Hi! Holy moly!
Soon after, Henry would start his masterpiece, a little-known film named Coraline.
My best collaborations with others have been where basically I've been left alone, that there's key points. Neil Gaiman was probably the best collaboration. At the very beginning, he sought me out. I got the pages. The first draft of the screenplay I wrote, the adaptation, honestly, I was talking to Neil a lot. He's a super smart, brilliant author, and it really sucked, the screenplay. It was too close to the book. And the most amazing thing is Neil, the author, instead of saying, oh, I love this because it's exactly like my book, he said, you know what, we need to stop talking and you need to go off and find your vision. That's an amazing thing, a generous thing, and ultimately a smart thing. So I went off, I changed the setting of Coraline to put it in the US because I was more comfortable writing American English. I created this other character, Wybie, for her to play off against, restructured, and then, grew it into my own project based on Neil's thing. When I came back to Neil and the producer, Bill Mechanic, they loved what I'd done. So I learned with Neil to check in after I'd created a large body of work. So at that point it was the screenplay, character designs. I didn't run everything by him. I'd design like a whole world and then invite him in as a sort of a checkup. And he almost always had a good note or three. They were always right, but he was very supportive. For example, the book, Coraline, when Coraline first visits the other world and meets her other mother, right away, it's kind of creepy, like in a stronger way than I ended up doing the book. So it goes to a dark place pretty quickly and then lives there a long time. I made an adjustment. I made it, except for these button eyes on the other people, everything was warm, friendly, and welcoming. So I ultimately got to as dark a place, but we waited much longer to go there. But when we go all the way.
What's wrong, Coraline? Don't you want to play?
You always sort of ramp up. You start with a few characters, a few sets, handful of animators. By the end, by the peak of Coraline, we had 30 sets going at once. Some of the sets are as big as your kitchen tabletop. A few sets are gigantic. When Coraline runs through the orchard, frightened, those three sets combined is 50 feet long. How do we keep track of it? Well, animation is slow, so you're doing rehearsals on some sets, you're doing lighting, camera tests on others. You only after you've rehearsed do you launch a shot. So my job is to interact, like a surgeon going on rounds. I'm in constant motion, checking in on what's happening on the sets, in editorial, out in the art department. And it got to be more than we really could handle, but since we grew into it gradually, we ended up being able to do so.
One of the main things I like about Coraline is she is an ordinary girl. She doesn't have superpowers. She's not a super genius. She's brave and stubborn, and in the end, it allows an ordinary girl to face horrible, terrible evil and succeed.
Between 2009 and today, Selick has been on and off project after project, which just didn't seem to work out, including a film for Disney called Shademaker, which was canceled after spending $50 million on the project. However, one seems to be sticking. In 2015, he began work on Wendell and Wild, a new stop-motion feature with Jordan Peele and Keegan-Michael Key, based on an original story by Selick. In 2018, the film was picked up by Netflix, and according to IMDb, the film should be coming out sometime in 2022.
Do it again.
Henry Selick's work is a short list, but absolutely jam-packed with amazing content. With Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline alone, we have proof of an amazing director for whom we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure we're all looking forward to his future. And perhaps, after such rave reviews, Monkeybone too? Probably not. Thank you to these people for your generous support, and a special thank you to John David. You guys are really helping keep this channel afloat. Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of Discographies. Don't forget to check out our Patreon and Discord, and click the thumbs up button below if you liked the video. And if you want to be notified when the next episode comes out, subscribe and click the bell. Comment below with characters you would like to see us cover. Further reading and references are linked below. We hope to see you in another Discography.
Short story, I when my sons were young, they'd be out trick-or-treating, and I was always the guy at home to, hand out the candy, and my wife would be out with them and their friends. And there just started to be more kids showing up dressed as characters from Nightmare Before Christmas, and eventually got to the point where there was always some kids, and I would, only if their parents were with them, I would invite them inside and show them the real Jack Skellington in his sled with the reindeer and Zero. And there was just this time where wow, the whole world, or a lot more people have embraced the film, and Disney figured it out, and they started getting it right and really, honoring the original thing.